3. Come on, let's go. Okay, hold on.
No, you got it. That doesn't sound anything like
1, 2, 3, 4. Jojo was a man who thought he was a loner. What he knew he wasn't last. Jojo left his home in Tucson, Arizona, for some California grass. Get back! Get back! Get back where you want to go! Get back! Get back! Get back from where you want to be blow!
You're about an octave above what I thought it was going to be.
Wow. Awesome.
I'm just clapping because it's over. And I don't understand if our guy is from across the pond and is an ex-drummer, we should have let him done his best Charlie Watts impersonation.
I know. Did I just steal the show? Did I just steal the show?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad you did. I just want to let you know my dog just ran out of the room.
Wow.
And number 2, I was a drummer in a band in Liverpool. I was planning on singing, but you did steal the show. But you want to know what type of drummer I was in a band in Liverpool?
Tell us.
It was the line from John Lennon was once asked by a reporter, is Ringo one of the best drummers in the world? And his answer was, don't be so bloody stupid. He's not even the best drummer in the Beatles, right? So
Exactly.
That's the type of drummer I was, and I think the bass player was better than me. So what happened was, I guess I was about 16. I won't tell you the year, but anyway, 16. And I realized that it wasn't going to get anywhere. We played one gig. In a Catholic club in Liverpool, and there was about 30 people when we started and about 10 when we finished. So I realized I needed to move into management. So I rented out our garage to the rest of the band and they found a decent drummer. And I met my wife about the time. There's a point to this, but there's a point. Wait for it. So my wife introduced me. I'm trying to court my wife. We've been married, by the way, for over 40 years now. But anyway, I met her. And she introduced me to her auntie, and her auntie lived near me. And she said, "Where do you live on this street? Do you live by the White House? No. What about the Red House? Near the shop? No. She said, "I don't know." She said, "Let's try again. Do you live anywhere near the awful boy who rents out his garage to bands in the street?" And I said, I am that awful boy.
I am the awful.
Oh,
and after that,
I love it.
I married my wife Debbie, and we've been married for over 40 years, and we've got 2 great kids. And so that was my first management job, was renting out a music venue, which was my garage in Liverpool. After being terrible drummer. So,
I mean, that is like business model creation right there.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
It's a classic rock and roll story. Not.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I guess a lot of us, speaking of drummers, I know we got to take a moment of silence for Charlie Watts.
Oh, yeah.
Passing away. That's really sad.
Such a nice guy.
Really?
Yeah, nice guy, snappy dresser, didn't like rock and roll, didn't party, just like the rest of us, eh?
Just like the rest of us. Just like his bandmates.
yeah. Like Keith Richards.
Yeah, like Keith Richards never partied.
Oh, my God.
Watts is dead? Oh, that's
Johnny Watts is dead.
I know that the best IoT battery resides in Keith Richards' body somewhere.
My theory is he actually died about 20 years ago. They just bring him back through each show.
Yes.
If you're I've been to loads of Stones concerts, including in the US, because he's in the US for a while. But when everybody goes to the bathroom, it's always when they give him his one solo number. It's written into his contract. He gets one solo number. That's when everybody leaves to go to the bathroom. And I don't think he notices.
That's awesome. I remember being in London a few summers ago, and I guess Glastonbury was going on at the time, and one of the newspapers I saw on the high street where I was had a picture of him, and the caption was like "Night of the Living Dead."
Yeah.
having the Stones playing there.
I mean, he would make the extras in the Thriller video look good looking. I mean, he was but he's still going, and Jagger's still dancing.
Amazing.
So
yeah.
You know what?
Anyway.
There's probably a lesson there.
Aren't we supposed to be talking about IoT? But this is a lot.
Yeah. We eventually get there.
I don't care.
Yeah,
but somehow we'll weave our way into it.
We'll weave our way.
Yeah. So to our audience, hey, it's wonderful having you. First off, Nick, we're going to give you a chance to introduce yourself and your company. But first off, we really want to thank you for the donation that your company made to Elevate Our Kids. It's a great cause, and you guys are great folks for being so generous. So thank you very much. Just want to make sure that we plug the generosity that you provided, and there's going to be some needy kids in needy communities who are going to get connected and have laptops. So very touched. Thank you so much on behalf of
You're welcome.
Our Kids. Yeah, and just before we start here, I on behalf of the IoT Coffee Talk team, I want to formally welcome you. And you have now stepped into what is pretty much the equivalent of like the Ali G show of IoT. And I know I have to bring Ali G up because you guys are probably only familiar with that. You wouldn't know what like Wayne's World of IoT is, but that is what I mean. No,
I do. I do know. I was in the I lived in the US for multiple years. I'm good.
Oh, you are? Okay.
Yeah.
Flying circus.
More like Wayne's World. Some of the ones.
Yes. Yeah. What you should have told him is we've brought him into the octagon.
Oh yeah.
Is that the MMA?
Yes. No. It's the Chuck Norris movie. We're going to Chuck Norris your ass. Like 25 minutes. Brave man.
I'm ready. Bring it on. That was my briefing. My briefing was one line. It's MMA on video.
It's MMA on video.
I mean,
so hey, Nick, introduce yourself. I mean, you have an amazing background. It seems like you were born as CEO and SVP when you look at your background. Tell us about yourself and your company.
I've done a lot of weird stuff. So, apart from the failed music career, look, I worked for two big multinationals, getting to one below CEO, HP and Cisco, doing global roles. I've done 4 startups. I'm on number 4. So I kind of can't make my mind up. I just get bored and I go between them. I've been based in 5 countries, including in Silicon Valley during the whole .com boom. There's a whole raft of stories there, by the way. I worked for Carly Fiorina directly for quite a while.
Wow, you're feeling the love there.
That's the private screening version of this speech.
Yes.
Wow.
I actually prior to Eseye, I'll get onto the IoT bit eventually, I promise you. So I ran global operations for Virgin Hyperloop. The next generation of transportation system. They've got one out in Vegas in the desert there. They built a full-size one. So I was the head salesman for Hyperloop. I gave a TED talk on Hyperloop, signed the first contract for Hyperloop anywhere in the world, which is the Mumbai-Pune route in India, to take a 3-hour journey and take it down to 25 minutes. And there's several million journeys a year of people go from between Mumbai and Pune for work. As the disparity in the house prices, and it'll basically give millions of journeys, hundreds of thousands of people 5 hours a day back. So you talk about IT making a contribution. You give 5 hours back to people. Pretty cool stuff. So I tried and failed to kill trains with Hyperloop, but it will happen one day. And there's a lot of stuff going on there. And then after that, I had been investing in this company, Eseye, and I just thought it was really cool. And I'd invested like 3-4 times. And I thought, I got to stop giving them money and actually just either pull it out or run the company. And they were kind enough to ask me to run it. And so for the last 3 years, I've been running it. And, we have 2,000 customers. We obviously get into what we do. But our founders, perhaps more importantly than me, just a bit of background to people, our founders are the Zigbee guys. So we all know Zigbee. Ian Marsden and Paul Marshall created Zigbee app. I would say it's used in billions of devices all over the world, which it is, but it's actually bigger than that because it's currently communicating between the Mars helicopter and the Mars rover. It's using Zigbee. And the original idea they had was ubiquitous connectivity out of a device where you didn't need to think about it, and it would be global, which of course is your garage door opener. I'll use American words on the garage, garage. Too, yeah. The American version. No, anyway, the garage door opener or your TV remote, which you can take around the world if you really wanted to, and it would work. And they just the genesis of Eseye was why doesn't IoT or M2M as was then? Remember, this is 14 years ago, right? Why doesn't M2M work like that? Why is it based on proprietary SIMs? And actually, will the promise of what became known as IoT, will we ever achieve the promise of ubiquitous connectivity in a silo proprietary model with MNOs, with all pushing my SIM versus somebody else's SIM? And I was part of the wider team at Cisco that predicted 50 billion things by 2020. And Ericsson.
All right, we're done here. We're done. Thanks for coming. You're out. Wow.
And I mean, claim to have credibility. I call it the biggest miss in the history of IT. I mean, we weren't
both
just
of us. We got no credibility at all.
We got no credibility. No, I just assume that nobody here. I'm assuming the base level is nobody here has any credibility, and we just have to build it up. So, we got it wrong, and we said, 50 billion by 2020. We got to 11 billion, and 9 of those were tablets and smartphones. I mean, it's the biggest miss in history. And so, and these guys, brilliant, they're still in the company, and just said, well, you kind of have to solve it a different way. You have to produce interoperability to get the inflection point of adoption, which means you have to, we'll get into it, but you have to be able to connect to any MNO, not as an MVNO, but as something different. So anyway, we'll get into that. But I joined 3.5 years ago, and now we're doing it. We power Amazon, we're Walmart, Philips, Sony, Bosch, bunch of really big clients using us. So it's going okay, and a lot of growth in the US.
Yeah, wow, that's an amazing legacy and future that you're looking at with all the things that you're doing and have done. Especially the hyperlooping. That's crazy. It's amazing. I have a theory. Well, let me say something really quickly. I'm really hurt that no one said the Beatles would, I did the Beatles proud.
On your guitar?
No one said that. Yes.
Yeah, well, we're all truthful people.
Yeah, you're so sensitive.
Yeah, do you want us to say that?
That was fake news.
Yeah.
Wow.
Horrible.
Wow.
Well, I thought you guys would be generous and make me feel good, for the effort. But anyway.
I was struggling where you were going with it, but I'll listen back. I'll listen back to it and send you a nice message.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
We'll send you a nice card. And some flowers.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was a unique rendition.
Yeah.
It was probably really
wow.
to listen to. But anyways, but it seems like, so the problem that you're trying to solve, I mean, IoT is really big, right? It's a lot of stuff. But, it seems like you guys are trying to do the big IoT stuff, right? Yeah. What I mean, macro IoT, not the stuff that's indoors as much as these things that are global or regional at scale, right?
Yeah, the 80 look, it's a classic Pareto. 80% of things in the world are owned by 20% of companies. Companies make stuff. Yeah. And we got one thing right 11 years ago, is that they do want to have it all connected, because you turn a product into an experience. You take CapEx, you turn it into OpEx, you sell it based on experience, you get data back on how people are actually using it, and then you actually compete based on a different experience. So that we got right. The bit that we kind of assumed was, I like to say that we were sort of mesmerized by these babies, We thought, well, this is tightly coupled hardware and software. We got some firmware, and we whack a SIM card into it, and it's got a screen, and it connects, right? Right? Well, actually, we got some fundamental things wrong. I mean, on the hardware side, the fact is that there's 7 or 8 brands of cell phones in the world, and they've all been pre-engineered and certified and all the money spent. But every IoT device, pretty much, apart from low-end trackers, and so every IoT device is hand-built for the use case. Like a coffee, we do all of Costa Coffee, just been bought by Coca-Cola. We do all the coffee machines. There's 90 sensors in a Costa coffee machine.
Wow.
It uses a 2-screen personalization capability where you hold your phone up to the screen and you scan the QR code, at which point the machine knows who you are, right? And you get your loyalty points. That's the deal. But now the machine reconfigures because it knows your patterns. It knows your patterns, knows what you want. It knows when you don't order a coffee, it send you a message saying, why haven't you stopped for your latte or whatever? And so it's just one example, but I blame Marc Andreessen. Now there's a good line, isn't it? I blame Marc Andreessen because he said that software eats hardware, and he was right until he was wrong. Because in the world of IoT, hardware actually is more important initially than the software, because the experience is delivered through hardware in terms of a device or an edge aggregation. And it raised the big issue, which these guys, they were essentially hardware guys, the founders, radio guys from Philips. And it raises the issue that if you're a big company and you want to IoT enable your products, who's going to design the hardware? And hardware is, Rob, you said on a tweet recently to me, hardware's hard. It's like, do you really want to be an expert on all the different modules and the firmware settings and EDRX and power saving modes and SIM toolkit and battery life management and sensors and, but you've got to solve that. Someone's got to solve that. And so you've got to start with hardware. Yeah. And most MVNOs when I was considering coming on board for this gig, thinking, do I want to do this? Most MVNOs say, no, we don't do the hardware. The MNOs, mobile network operators, they don't do the hardware. There's a bunch of people who do hardware, but they don't do connectivity. And so you think you got to start with the hardware. So we basically, as Eseye, help design. First step is we help design our customers' hardware. So we were, the logos on our website, we were involved in the initial, we weren't the only company, but we were involved in the initial concept. And then you got to be able to simulate, using network techniques, you got to be able to simulate what it will look like in every country. So there's technology you can get that simulates a network in a box, or actually multiple networks in a box, where you can say, okay, here's the hardware now. How will this device react in Poland? Mm-hmm. Or even in the US, the way EDRX works between Verizon and AT&T is different, right? So, and people don't know this. And so when you go through the networks, suddenly you get these errors. It's like, why is it not working? It's complicated stuff. And so that's why I got that picture behind my head. Yeah. We got a whole bunch we start off with the hardware side first, and most people avoid it because we were all conditioned to think it isn't important. It's really important.
Yeah. So Eseye are you guys an Eseye then? Is that the reason why, is that the story behind the name of the company?
It's not a great name. Very polite. It's not a great name, is it? I was called Easy Eyes. People say Easy Eyes. What do you call
That's kind of cool too.
When we're talking in France, they say, it is Eseye, which means French for try. You try harder. Eseye.
Try hard.
Guy said to me yesterday, what was the name of your company? The Eyes. I have no idea why the founders, who did so many things so great, And I hope
No, I mean, it sounds like you guys are doing literally systems integration.
Well, the funny thing is,
which is cool.
When we actually, what we're now doing, because of the hardware side is becoming more important, the hardware consulting side is actually growing. So actually, after 14 years, I think we're now becoming a system integrator. But honestly, in the early days, it was because the domain name hadn't been grabbed by anybody else. And it was 5 characters, which is the optimal thing that people will put into a search engine. That was it. But actually, we are becoming an SI because we are doing device design for a whole bunch of people. So we get to see some really cool products before they hit the market. So
Nick, do you have any? Are the founders by chance from a Spanish-speaking country?
No.
No. Okay, so there goes my theory about the company name. They were probably going, IoT S and try to describe it S I, like it's
or
how much, no matter how much we search, that there's no logic here. Hey,
that's the story of my life.
Yeah, I've searching. But anyway, despite the name, I do believe we're actually coming back to land on, and I will claim retrospectively that it was a great cunning plan all the way along to call us SI. So actually, it was yes, you're right, Leonard. It was a really smart move. We can now reveal it to the world on this podcast.
I hope that of all the people that are listening to this and caught Nick's comment about the Costa coffee machine having 90 sensors and you holding up your phone to it, people who go to McDonald's pitch this. The ice cream machines, they keep breaking. Just saying, right? Different experiences, right?
Yeah.
The ice cream machines. Please.
McDonald's soft serve is always out of stock.
Well, maybe they should give us hope they're watching to give us a call. Let me tell you something else about that Costa coffee machine, right? It's actually mass personalization. Okay, so I always come at it from the business model, right? So you go from the hardware, right? 90 sensors, it'll actually pump out coffee smells. Have you ever seen a Costa coffee machine? It can pump out noises like cups and spoons, and it pumps out. It's got like a little cartridges, like inkjet cartridges, which are coffee. So as you walk past it, you smell and you hear coffee.
Oh my
gosh! Oh, I need a coffee, right? So, but if you go into Starbucks, they take a penny or a Sharpie in the US. Say, what's your name, Nick? They write your name on the side of the cup, and then somebody says, skinny latte for Nick. And then the moment you pick that cup up, they don't know who the hell you are, right? They don't know who the hell you are. They don't know whether you've been in the store. They don't know you ordered a latte. They don't know anything. So what Costa do is when you get your QR code, to get your loyalty points, and every 10 coffees you get a free coffee, whatever, they know everything about you. They know what store, what time of day, what you ordered. And that's a 1 square meter machine. And it's not in a Costa shop. It's in a gas station or it's in a convenience store. So they can enter a new market with a 1 square meter machine that they plug in and it just connects. And they enter a market, and then they've got all the marketing information. And so it's actually mass personalization and disruption of the retail model, because you don't need a 3-year lease on a 3,000 square foot store, and then you never know who your customers are.
Yeah.
So it's clever. That's what IoT can do, is turn products into experiences. If you start with the experience and then build the hardware to deliver the experience.
Yeah, mass personalization is huge. And knowing people's preferences. When I did IoT and vending machines in the mid 90s, we initially did it for route optimization for route drivers refilling Coke and candy machines. But then over time, we realized, oh my gosh, we're getting real-time information on the preferences of the people. You always see a bank of vending machines in different locations, and we'd find out, oh, well, this vending machines next to this law firm, they really love those white powdered donuts. So let's double up or triple up the number of white donuts, and now you're making more money. You're totally right. As soon as you get those preferences and personalization, it does wonders for your revenue, and it does wonders for repeat customers, making it sticky.
And most of the machines now, the vending machines have a big flat screen display on, so they have these promotions, but there can be personalized promotions. I mean, we do all the coffee machines in the Paris Metro, for example, and those things are doing 3 gig of data a month. Right? Think about that. The basic telemetry for how many cups of coffee you've served does not need 3 gig a month. Right? We talk a lot about narrowband and Cat M1, and that's where all the growth is. But the reason it's doing 3 gig a month, it's the video. It's video, and then you can run advertising. So to your point, Rob, the advertising doesn't have to be the coffee, right? If you know somebody does a coffee and then buys a donut, you can advertise donuts to them while they're waiting for the coffee.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Elevators, you talk to Otis, the walls of elevators are becoming digital advertising.
That's right.
So maybe the business model isn't, okay, we got to pay for all this hardware and build this out, but let's find a way to, let's find some creative business models to pay for this and then scale out. I mean, I'm curious, Nick, with your eye on all of these customers that are coming in for advice and consulting and need custom hardware built. You're seeing a lot of different things. So I always kind of have this debate inside my own head around, because I love the customer experience angle, but what are you seeing coming in, and are you seeing more things being driven by the end customer experience, or just the experience from the beginning of product development all the way through the supply chain to the customer? Are there any areas that you're seeing more traction?
Yeah, Stephanie. Yeah, I would say, so I'm a great student of business theory and read a load of books. And if you take the Geoffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm, he talks about the bowling pin. You know, when you cross the chasm, which is where we are, you got 20% adoption, 80% still to go. We haven't crossed the chasm in Geoffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm terms. And you cross the chasm by certain industry verticals go first. And they call them the bowling pins. Then you get the Main Street and the yada, yada, yada. So the bowling pins, I would say right now, is definitely vending. And that's linked to the disruption in the high street. Because when you're under financial pressure, you have to embrace it. All disruption accelerates during a downturn. Adoption of new technologies has always been linked to, I've lived through multiple downturns. Most of the leaders in IT were born as companies during downturns. And so vending is basically disruption of the high street, principally driven by Amazon. The second one, really obvious, is healthcare. We have a customer in the US that is solving the problem of remote patient monitoring. Because with COVID now and the Delta variant, and unfortunately, we're still in there and getting worse, there's huge pressure to free up the beds in the US so that they can get the Delta patients in, which means you've got to do RPM, remote patient monitoring, which means you've got to give them the finger temperature sensor and the cholesterol and all the blood pressure stuff. And it's all got to be cellular connected into an aggregation hub and whatever. And it's got to work, it's something we'll get onto. It's got to be 100% connectivity. I mean, it's not, you can't say, when you're driving a new car, you say, hold on a second. Okay, I'm with you now. That was a well-known dip in the road, or I go to the window here and I can get a signal. If you're a 800-pound coffee machine or an EV charger, you can't go to the window. So you've got to have 100% connectivity, which nobody offers, no one MNO offers. So the common theme on these 5 industry verticals is business outcome, is back-end business process, simpler manufacturing, simpler supply chain, simpler warranty, simpler installation, not having to put different SIM cards in, and marketing information to allow you to do mass personalization of new products or consumer experiences. 100%, where the business case is linked to, is predicated and proportional to the percentage connectivity. So 94% of heart monitor connectivity is not a good business case. It's got to be 100. So I would say healthcare, EV chargers, obviously driven by the whole carbon neutral push. But again, if you don't the business model, the way it works for EV chargers, and I think it's the same in the US, is if you don't, oh, someone calling me, I'll turn that off. If you don't get, if your charger isn't connected, you have to give the electricity away for free. You can't say to the customer, well, let's wait till the connectivity is restored. So you pay penalties like smart meters. You pay for every 1% below 100%, the meter company pays a penalty, okay, because it's a national utility. So meters, healthcare, vending, EV chargers, and then just asset tracking is an enormous one. Like one of our customers is Brambles, who own the CHEP brand. They have 300 million pallets. So you go into Costco, you see those blue pallets, they're all stacked up, right?
Yeah.
They've got a battery tracker in them. So they know more about where their customers' products are than their customers do. So then instead of selling pallets, they become an information company selling information to their customers about where their customers' products are. So they reinvent themselves from a product company to an information company because their customers' products are on their pallets.
Right.
So they're the hot ones right now, but they all have the same thing in common. You need 100% connectivity, and the business case is not around selling more product. It's about saving money at the back end or creating a new revenue stream like Brambles. Having it like Bosch lawnmowers, robotic lawnmowers, one product, one chip eSIM on the board for every lawnmower, sell it in 120 countries, and it connects 100% all the time, which means you reduce your number of SKUs and you reduce your manufacturing, your supply chain. So the business benefit of IoT is not at the front end, it's in the back end of the business processes. And I think a lot of people are looking in the wrong direction. They're looking at the front end.
Nick, real quick, what do you, and then maybe, some of our other guys will ask questions here, but really quickly, what do you mean by 100% connectivity?
Okay. So this is the second thing I talked about hardware, but the big aha that our founders had is no matter how big an MNO is, they do not offer 100. No MNO offers 100% connectivity, and the reason is no one's got enough money to buy a local MNO in every country. That's trillions of dollars. And secondly, no one's got enough capex to pay for a massive infrastructure for every GPS coordinate.
Yeah.
Because IoT devices are often where the people aren't, like ag tech. So you don't have mass coverage, right? It's basically, if you look at the GSMA website, there's 823, I think it is, MNOs. They all have the same business model, which is the ransom strip, which is the proprietary SIM, right? And that's the IMSI. The IMSI is on the SIM, you connect to them and then they roam. Okay, now that model worked for many years, roaming, right? Mm-hmm. And you can get to 94, 95%. You can't get to 100, but let's say you get to 94, 95. The problem is, and I would contend that this has happened multiple times in the industry, and it certainly happened with cloud, and it happened with the move to SaaS. The problem is that the way roaming works is that you guys will know this. The person who takes the on-net connectivity gets 100% of the ARPU, say $1 a month a device, whatever. You get 100%. When you roam to somebody else, the average amount of revenue that's passed out is 20%. So first of all, you got a 5-to-1 disparity. So the roamer only gets 20%, but everybody roams on everybody else. It kind of all comes out in the wash. Then what happens is data prices start to decline. So instead of getting 20% of $1, you're getting 20% of 10 cents. And now you're getting 20% of 5 cents. And then with narrowband IoT, you're getting 20% of 1 cent. But the problem is your infrastructure isn't coming down on the same price curve. Your Cisco routers aren't getting, and I was 13 years at Cisco, right? They're not getting cheaper. Your SmartNet contract definitely not getting cheaper. Your engineers aren't taking pay cuts. So what's happening is you have this huge growing disincentive to accept roaming. So there's a fracturing of the fundamental financial model, like there was with selling licenses versus selling SaaS. You know which one's going to win, right? You know which one's going to win. So what we're seeing happening is, first of all, reductions in functionality on roaming. I mentioned EDRX. We can roam onto 700 networks, but I'll talk about it later. We can localize onto a whole series of networks, including Verizon. David, we can localize Verizon's IMSI over the air into our SIM, into what's called the Step 2 profile. But we manage 700 roaming contracts. 83% of those roaming contracts do not support power saving mode. That's not a technical thing. It's because by not supporting power save mode, they get 100% of the connection because they get an on-net local connection. And then you also get people falling out all the time. It doesn't make the news, right? But we had a notification recently, let's just say in North America, where we got 4 hours notice that roaming of certain partners was suspended. 4 hours. What are you going to do? Are you going to go to these medical devices with someone quickly swap a SIM over?
Yeah.
And the reason is because people have quotas to limit the economic downside of roaming. And these, once they're exceeded, the CFOs have arguments and they break, and quote, roaming agreements break all the time, like weekly, many times. So what we say is, look, roaming, and I've talked to a lot of industry analysts about this. There's a lot of guys of Kaleido Research or specialists in this, wrote a white paper on it recently. There's a fundamental financial problem in roaming, which is the disparity of the share of the pot. So what we did is that we have what we call, it's a federation, but it's really like the Star Alliance, okay? So, you know, the Star Alliance, you book one airline ticket and you can fly on multiple airlines, but you only pay once, you have one e-ticket number and hopefully your baggage transfers, but you pay once, right? And all the money is then shared. So the way Eseye works is that we have a series of MNOs where we can localize the connection by putting the IMSI OTA into our SIM, into what's called the Step 2 profile in the SIM. What that means is that each one of those people are getting 100%. They're not getting 20%. But because they're all selling large global projects, they're all selling on behalf of the other. So if Verizon sells in the US a global project, we localize onto Verizon in the US. But if it drops into Africa, say, MTN get the connection. So we do all of Amazon's lockers, right? So they're putting a locker on every street corner in the world. Well, every time one of those lockers go in, the MNO that we push into the device, localization, not roaming, gets 100% of the connection. So everyone's selling on behalf of everybody else. And if you think about it, that solves the financial model and actually is what the customer needs, because the customer wants 100% connectivity. So we do EUICC, the technical term is EUICC enabled orchestration with a maximum choice of localization and roaming. And we have about 15, we can localize in China, India, Brazil, Turkey, US, Canada, Africa, Europe, and we'll probably add 6 more in the next 6 months. And it's we think it's the only way to solve this problem. You've got to abstract the connectivity in the what's called the SMSR, the software that does the switching, that controls the IMSI in the device. You've got to abstract it into an agnostic cloud layer and have it agnostic to the underlying MNOs, because otherwise the parochial behavior of the MNOs will say, I'm going to choose the roaming partner based on my profitability of my roaming agreements. And that's not good for the customer. So it's outside in, and it's kind of like it's not an MVNO, it's kind of like a VMNO, right? You know what I mean? It's like a large, so we won Amazon because we're more global than AT&T. Yeah. We're a tiny company, but the architecture model is because we can do this. So I think the industry is changing, and IoT demands 100% ubiquitous out of the device connectivity. Otherwise, you know, every 1% of connectivity kills your business case. And it's a proprietary. All technology starts off as proprietary, and ultimately becomes interoperable, driven by consumer demand. And we've proven that over 40 years. I think that's what's happening right now to cellular connectivity and IoT.
And
That's the big change.
That's so I'll say this. So, Rob and I, we still work for the men, but we're not sponsored by the men for this. We do our own thing. So with that disclosure out of the way, and your cool explanation of, how you solve for whoever's localized gets 100% of the revenue, then what's the pushback that, that you might hear from the telcos is say, I want 100% of everything, which isn't feasible, or the 20% that I'm getting with my roaming agreement with carriers, A, B, and C for this deal is greater than the cut I have to give to you. What's the pushback from a telco perspective? If you can, share
David, there is pushback, and a lot of it is just the sort of cultural change that I just described. So I'll answer that with, as I always do, with a customer case study. I'll use customer examples in every one of my answers. So I was in Sydney, Australia, and I met the CTO of Telstra. Now, Telstra are 90% market share in Australia, right? Mm. So I said, well, we want to do an interconnect with you, and we don't just want to roam onto you. We want to interconnect. We want access to your security codes, your IMSIs, and we want to be able to localize our SIM onto your network, and it'll be our SIM, our brand, not you. And Australians use colourful language, which I couldn't possibly repeat in this very august company.
Yes, you can.
Coming from the guy from Liverpool. Yeah,
okay. He basically said something like, I don't think that's a very good idea, old boy. No, he didn't say that. He told me to go forth. And he said, why would I do that? And he said, why would I do that? That's not our policy, right? We've never done that. And that's the answer. We've never done that. And I said, let me make it easy for you. We've won Amazon lockers as an example. We do more than one line for Amazon, but anyway, Amazon lockers, and these lockers or a Bosch lawnmower or whatever you want. Sony's retail arm for PS4, PS5. These things are going to come in on a container into Australia. You will have no idea. They're going to get switched on and they're going to connect to us. We're going to choose the IMSI, right? Because it's not got your SIM in it. I can put your IMSI in it, or I can put Optus IMSI in it, or Vodafone Australia IMSI in it. Which do you want? Mm. And so the point is that this is free business. It's free business. And if you accept the 2080 thing that we talked about, back to the famous biggest miss in history, if 80% of things are not yet connected, the future growth on IoT and where the money is, not the number of devices, but where the money is. The money is in the 80% of large company deployments, right? Bosch have, 700 things they sell. They got about 4 of them are smart, right? Most of this hasn't happened yet. Right. The moment you solve the problem and you do that, then the money is going to be in the big end, in the high end, the high multiple megabytes, because of the data price decline, driven by people like Once and others. So what you're saying is, your customers are going to want to do global stuff, and they're not going to want to put a different SIM in the device based on which country it goes into, which is what we've done for the last 15 years. And even within the US, where you guys are based, it's perfectly normal for installers of devices to have pockets full of SIMs, and they push them in the device to see whether they get a signal, and if they do, then fine, they move on to the next one. It's a proprietary stovepipe business where the rules have been written for the players, right? But this was the same. I'm old enough to tell the stories about when we went from proprietary. I used to sell HP 3000s for Hewlett Packard, right? And then Decute sold digital VAX, and IBM sold AS400. And we all had our own stacks, and we all defended it. And then it was open systems and Unix and whatever. And interoperability caused the inflection point of adoption. It was the same with open source. It was the same with cloud. Time after time again, the IT industry leaps forward because we enable interoperability in some form of de facto standard. And that's when user adoption happens, because we solve customers' problems. So the answer to the question is, it takes a bit of persuading. It takes a bit of explaining. When people get it, they say, actually, if I'm going to get the business anyway, Star Alliance, then I'm going to get business that I don't know about, and I'm going to get 100. Well, it's not quite 100%. We take a few cents off the top, and then so they get 95, right? Why wouldn't I do it? And I think that the pressure the MNOs are under is enormous. They're basically, and we love the MNOs, they're our partners, but they say, look, we've been selling SIMs for a long time, and life's been good. That's what it says on my T-shirt. Life's good, right? But what's happening is the data price decline is really killing them. And the question is, what's their future going to be? I'll give you one more example. We talk about plastic SIMs and eSIMs, but what's happening right now is the movement to eSIM means that the eSIM is the eSIM, which is not embedded, the eSIM technology, which sits next to the module, which is going to drift into the iSIM. So they're just the eSIM technology. The eSIM technology is dynamically programmable to receive a different IMSI OTA. Okay, so Thales Gemalto just announced a strategy on that publicly, where you have a database of IMSIs, international mobile subscriber identities, and you can push them into the eSIM. But just think about that. That means that a SIM in a device is no longer proprietary. We just broke the link that we've had for 30 years. We just broke the link. At that point, you have global SIMs. Now, you got to solve a lot of other problems like billing and APIs and whatever. But then when it becomes an iSIM, the physical form factor disappears and it becomes firmware in the module. But the firmware does exactly the same thing. So the power, the control of the connection is moving into the module, away from the SIM, and into the brokering or the switch layer, which is controlling the logic of use this SIM now, use this IMSI now, which is great for the industry, because now we're saying, what's it going to take to do 100% of coffee machines all the time, 100% of Bosch lawnmowers? So you can have rules based on latency, cost, availability, something goes wrong or something's about to go wrong, switch before it does. So I think the industry is undergoing one of the biggest disruptions. No coincidence that it's happening during economic pressure, as I said previously, where we're seeing the role of the players change, and then of course you have the emergence of the hyperscalers as well. So the new players are the module players, the hyperscalers, and the customer saying, I want ubiquitous connectivity, and I don't want proprietary lock-in. And I think the mobile network industry this isn't new. It's just that the mobile network industry is one of the last ones to go through this, because most other parts of IT went through something similar like this I would contend, over the last 20 to 30 years.
Yeah. So you know what?
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Marc.
No, go ahead, Marc.
One question. So can you tell us maybe I get not a bit technical, but just what's the ranking of cellular connectivity? I'm changing a bit the topic, but what do you usually use as the IoT, GPRS?
When you say what's the ranking,
what's the top or the most used or the most demanded?
The most popular.
Yeah, or the most popular. Yeah.
In terms of RFPs that we see out there, it's I would say it's 4G and Cat M1. So first of all, there's less than 10 roaming agreements globally on narrowband. So despite everything that you read, it's not narrowband, because and we know why there's less than 10. It's the economic model. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised. It's not gonna suddenly go to 500 roaming agreements. But and then all at the other end, you got everyone talking about 5G and da da da. But the problem is, Yeah, you can get some experimentation on 5G, but the price of your modem, your module in your device, the 5G module,
It's very expensive.
triples the cost of the device. So, so the IT industry is always hypes about both ends of the spectrum, but you have the move of the sunsets of the 2G and the 3G sunsets is pushing people towards 4G and dual band modems, particularly around Cat-M1. Narrowband capable of Cat-M1 modems. The other thing I would say is really big right now is private LTE. So you get, every factory is going to have a private LTE, so not a non-cellular network. And so there's a lot of people buying spectrum, as you guys are aware.
Yeah.
I mean, universities buying spectrum. We're working with a firm in the US that's putting private LTE into every US garage, a gas station forecourt. So you're going to see private LTE networks and a mixture of public and private blended together into the aggregation device and different use cases. So we can go deep on that if you want. But right now, the RFPs that we're seeing are a Cat-M1 because it's the most reliable at the low end, and still 4G at the high end, if you like. If that answers your question.
Absolutely.
A lot of people asking for narrowband, and then you actually say,
yeah,
you don't
it doesn't exist yet.
Yeah, I got Rome.
Yeah.
And
So,
sorry, go ahead, Rob.
So I was
I'm
just
saying we'll
curious.
get there, but not yet.
Yeah, because obviously you can roam with Cat-M1, right?
Yeah.
Still get almost as narrow as NBIT, and it's still IP based. Yeah,
It's and you can price it to meet the use case, Rob. Yeah, you're right. So Cat-M1 and you have these dual band modems, which are but tell you what we're not seeing. We're not, and maybe it's the segment that we're in, but in terms of the unlicensed spectrum, we see a lot of LoRa, but we see less and less of Sigfox.
right. That's what we've been seeing too.
I'm not making any predictions. I'm just saying that.
And again,
Sigfox.
And are you mixing both technologies?
David's got to put a disclaimer in.
Yeah.
So it's interesting about the pricing. You mentioned once, and I've worked with Teal Communications and everything, and so lots of people are doing global SIMs. Lots of people are kind of doing the roaming thing, and obviously we have a giant system at Ericsson that does that. And it's more about contracts than technology in many cases.
That's right.
And I don't know what, and I don't want you to talk about your pricing necessarily, but I do find it interesting. Like I did a ag tech, POC for a customer, and we used Cat-M1, but I used one of those, MVNOs that does the global SIM, but also what was really attractive was it was 1 penny per megabyte.
Yeah, that's market rate. Yeah, that, by the way, that is.
Yeah.
So we buy wholesale data.
Yeah.
Of all the interconnect partners, and we blend it together. So if you're a customer and you want 100,000 devices, 1 meg a month, it's a penny, right? It's a penny, but we're buying it wholesale off multiple people, and we're switching the provider, and we're taking the risk management on the cost, right? So we do global pricing, but the first part of your question was about once, and once are just one of the people who are doing very well, 7 million connections now, I believe. But I saw a study from an industry analyst company that when you think that you're falling down the cliff in the dark and you stop falling and you think, oh, that's it, and then you realize no, you're only about a quarter of the way down the cliff. If you look at the cost per megabyte of cellular data into your cell phone as a consumer and IoT data, it's still about 3 or 4 times more expensive for IoT data. And there is really no fundamental reason why that should be.
Right.
So that says it's got a long way further to drop, which is great for customers.
Yeah.
Like, the price of the data has got to the point where it's not important.
Right.
It's not important.
We were speaking some episodes ago that at the end, the connectivity price, it's not relevant on the complete project.
In effect, data's free. It's over. Data's free. which comes back to the M&O reinvention that we were talking about. When data's free and you've got a business built around data, what's your plan B? You've got to move up the stack. And let me give you an example of that. I think this is a really cool one. We just announced a partnership with a great company in the US, Palo Alto, based called Armis. Armis do agentless security, right? So there's a lot of talk about SIM, the security certificate management in the SIM, the safe standard out of the GSMA. But one of the things that over and above storing the certificate in the SIM is you've really got to actually do policy management from the center as an enterprise to the edge to spot detect anomalous behavior and then take remedial action, right? Which is great if everything's connected to an Ethernet port in your network. But when the devices that you're worried about are behind the M&O's firewall, they're invisible. So Armis do agentless security. So the idea is they like radar. They recognize, oh, that's a Lexmark printer, that's a Samsung phone, that's a Cisco router, that's a Dell PC. And then they say, it's like Nest. Is it behaving the right way? It's not behaving, quarantine it. It's not based on putting agent software on the device, which is what you have to do because of the proliferation of devices. But they can't see the fastest growing area of devices, which are IoT, because they're not connected to the enterprise. It's just the data which could have the security threat in it. So one of the things, we run everything over a private MPLS network, right? So we got the M&Os connected, we're abstracted over a private MPLS network. So we have net flow data or the ability to deep packet inspect on the application and the security and the data and the device and blah, blah. So by connecting a private MPLS network to an enterprise private MPLS network, what you get is the ability to take your security policy or configuration policy or compliant policy out to the edge as the edge expands. And that's actually what the CISO or the CIO or the whatever needs, to avoid the colonial pipelines, which is how can I set policy centrally? And then if anyone connects any device to any network operator, my policy is auto-deployed to the edge. Now, to do that, you can't use the internet. You've got to use an MPLS network, encrypted APN access and MPLS network. So another area that is safe ground as the data commoditizes is the value-added services, API monetization, et cetera, et cetera. We've got to help the industry move up, all the players, including the MNOs, move up to the value-added services in the platform, because data is, to all intents and purposes, now free, particularly at the low end.
Nick, that was super cool. By the way, that the security bit, I'm going to read more about it. But here's another question on that. So individual telcos, we all have SIM management tools, whether for reporting or OTA or services, and thinking about EDRX. It behaves, as you said, it doesn't behave the same way across global geographies. And that's a challenge. So what's your view on a use case that will necessitate a device to adhere to an EDRX schedule to, maximize battery life and therefore the business case? Is this something that, at this point you guys been there, done that? Yeah.
Well, just to be specific, and I'm very familiar with the point that you're making. So on battery life management, so obviously the industry standard that we're all saying, the savior of all of this is EUICC. Oh, EUICC is going to solve this. Well, kind of, sort of, not really. EUICC means that you can transfer the IMSI, but the management of the IMSIs has to be abstracted into an agnostic rules-based machine. So let me give you an example. Different networks not only treat EDRX differently, which means that you need to, you can't have one, you need a rules-based engine to do it, but actually they wake just a simple stuff like they wake the battery up for a different number of seconds in order to switch the IMSI.
Right.
So it could be 3 seconds, and it could be as long as 40 seconds. That is the biggest drain on the battery, because if you have something which needs to just say "I'm here" once a day, but if it's moving and it wakes up, the amount of energy it's expending to switch IMSI as it moves is way outweighs the amount of energy it expends just to say "I'm here." So my point about this is that because we've got proprietary architecture stacks in each of the MNOs. By the way, not just each of the MNOs, like the company who you work for, but not representing today with your CDMA background, by the way, but also the fact that some people are fully EUICC and some people are not EUICC. So we have completely different stacks, right? So what you've got to abstract this complexity up into some agnostic layer that provides some level of control, because I call it like the SAP of IoT. SAP was not a better general ledger than McCormack and Dodge. It wasn't a better CRM system than whatever was out there, but it gave control and workflow and consistency across large corporations. So, you can't solve all these issues, and you've mentioned one or two of them, but there's hundreds of them when you get into IoT. There's hundreds. You can't solve them by doing individual connections and individual workarounds by MNO, because there's 800 MNOs out there, and they're changing their architecture all the time. So this to me is it's not quite philosophical. I'm searching for the word. The way in which we have to solve the complexity of IoT to unleash the inherent adoption that we've been waiting for is to abstract a lot of the capabilities into an agnostic, independent layer, which can then dynamically reconfigure the rules based on the MNOs that are being used at the time. And that's what I meant by the SAP thing. You've got to pull it up. So the individual players still play, but the interoperability, but we're not going to have suddenly a standard that everybody adopts and these problems go away. I think we may have thought that was EUICC, but with the SMSR and the SMDP, just get a little bit more technical now, still resident within the MNO, then the switching rules are still contained in each individual player. And from an enterprise point of view, that means the enterprise want control of the switching. We're seeing a shift in power to the enterprise that says, I want to control the switching rules. And if I want to be able to swap an MNO with a push of a button. So the enterprises will take control. The rules will abstract. We solve these problems at a higher layer, and that layer will be cloud-based, but will become, for the larger customers, will start to blend into the infrastructure of the larger customer. So you'll have private instances of the switch, same way as AWS went, which became a generic service, and then you had private instances of AWS for large customers. So, for every EDRX or PSM example or firmware or whatever, there's hundreds of these, which is where we started, which is why it's so complicated. You've got to abstract it. We've got to get interoperability, and it's got to be agnostic to solve these issues.
Then I have one more for you that I think will be interesting to our audience, because it's been a pain. So with traditional roaming, cellular-based roaming, you have countries whose regulation dictate that you cannot roam in this geography for more than X, and the day after we shut you down, right? And there's nothing you can do about it.
There's nothing you can do.
Right. Now, in the way you've eloquently explained how you guys do it, this arguably goes away because you're localized, right? So okay.
Yeah. So I mean, for example, I get into the Brambles. Brambles send a lot of pallets to Turkey, right? I don't know you guys. Turkey's 3 months and you're off. Oh, by the way, there is a plan B, or you can give them like £40 or $60, whatever. But it's not worth it because it's the business case goes. So it's protectionism because they're trying to protect the hometown hero, right? It's protectionism. That's why I meant the rules of the game are geared towards the players. So what you do is you do an interconnect, which says, fine, then when the device lands in Turkey, I'll use triangulation or whatever it is, and I'll just localize onto Vodafone Turkey. By the way, those rules are a lot more common than people think. They are Brazil with the Anatel is a big one, China. So we can localize in China. And it's not just the connection. It's the type of data that can go outside the country. So those Costa coffee machines, the data on the telemetry can be backhauled to Costa, but they all pay with QR codes with Alipay in China. The Alipay payment mechanism goes 23 times back and forth to the MNO in order to approve the financial transaction. We found out. Don't know why, but it does. None of that data can leave China because it's financial data. So again, it's MNO's complex. You peel back the onion. It's like, oh, well, this data can go out, that data can't. So you need a local breakout, data sovereignty. So, we think, we're biased, of course. We built the company on this, but we think this complexity is not suddenly going to go away. We've got to federate it. Star Alliance, actually put Visa on top, take the money and distribute it, take a fee and distribute it. And you've got to abstract the complexity into an agnostic independent layer. And our belief is that's what's needed to unleash IoT. And then you get cool case studies of incredible, delivering water to people in Africa who can't get hold of it, electricity, healthcare examples. I mean, just cool case studies that are waiting out there. And I think that's what hopefully we can get through this maturity of the industry of the next few years around interoperability.
Thanks for that, Nick.
Wow, that's a lot of thought-provoking.
A lot of stuff.
You've been sharing.
A lot of stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
From Ringo to the big vision. Didn't think we'd cover that in an hour.
And Nick, I'm picking up a little bit of John Lennon in the accent there. I did say, Leonard, I could do this in a Liverpool accent, but he wouldn't even know what I was talking about. You know what I mean? And that's supposed to be normal. We should all talk like that.
Ringo was the voice on Thomas the Tank Engine. I think you have those books in the US.
I did not know that.
Yeah, right. Ringo's the voice of Thomas the Tank Engine, so it doesn't matter that he wasn't the best drummer in the Beatles.
That's right. All our kids watched Thomas the Tank Engine. I remember Ringo doing that.
Yeah,
totally.
But remember this: you don't have to be the best drummer. You just have to be able to keep time.
Yeah,
That's all that matters.
I'm not sure I could do that, actually.
And then you suck. No wonder you didn't make it in music. No, just kidding.
Yeah, I'm very proud. I switched. Quickly.
Yeah. So I'm out of coffee. Is anyone else? Oh, we've run dry. And
I'm empty.
Yeah. I just wanted to give you one last chance. Do you want to sing? No. I'm not a great believer of inflicting pain on mass audiences.
Okay. I think the mystery of wondering just how bad a singer I am is probably enough for people at this stage.
Okay. Well, I think you're sated by the fact that you've discovered how bad of a singer I am.
That actually is true.
Right? Okay, yeah.
But you're a great guitarist. You're a great guitarist.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Agreed.
No more singing.
You know what? I have to say, I've been playing for so long, I'm surprised I'm not better than I am. But thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Great. I enjoyed it, guys.
Yeah. Great having you.
Awesome session.
Great MMA. I'm still... Can I climb out the cage? Am I good to go?
Exactly.
I don't know. You did a great job. I think you kicked our asses.
Yeah, you're going to climb out of the cage, and then Joe Rogan is going to interview you.
He's the number one, isn't he? Yeah,
he is number one.
He's number one. Yeah.
I think you'll go down in history as the most unscathed host we've had and I don't know why. Like I was all hyped up, but it's like,
I know.
This was a great session. You touched on so many examples of how have you been resolving pain that we've been talking about, and we keep talking about, that it was hard to like body slam you from the top.
Hard to lay a glove. What I would say is that Americans often mistake an English accent for intelligence, so you just got to fact check it.
The beauty is that you called yourself out on the $50 billion devices and everything else. So hey.
Oh, and Rob was
honestly,
there.
We didn't have to body slam you. You body slammed yourself.
I bought it. Okay.
There you go.
Great
The biggest
observation.
miss in history.
Biggest miss in history. Yeah.
That's awesome.
So proud.
A lot of great nuggets from this session. I'm gonna have to re-listen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Enjoyed it, and great initiative on Elevate Our Kids. By the way, we're really proud to support it. I hope we can support it going forward as well. So
thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Thank you so much.
yeah.
All right. Who wants to take us out?
You have a good one. Oh, you
Have a
take
great
us
one.
out.
Thanks a lot.
Rob, take us
Play us
out.
Not done yet. We got to, we got to take this.
Sorry.
show out.
Is this the encore?
Rob.
Yeah, so all of you good folks out there that are loving cellular IoT and roaming without having to roam, come to www.iotcoffeetalk.com, and we're going to redirect you to YouTube. But you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We're here every week to just ruin your lives. Welcome. It's been great having everybody here in the Octagon. Looks like we came out unscathed. Hope you learned a lot of good stuff, and we will see you next time. Make sure to
subscribe, and hey, don't forget to check out Eseye or Eseye or
Some weird English.
Yeah.
Check them out.
Just do a screenshot and write it down afterwards. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Take care, guys.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.